Hello, everyone. It's your boy Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. And earlier in the week, I saw a film called Yesterday, the newest film from Danny Boyle, which I also mentioned as being one of the hidden gems of June 2019. And I'll let you know my thoughts after the jump. So, for those of you who don't know, Yesterday is a movie from Danny Boyle, who did Slumdog Millionaire, about a singer-songwriter named Jack who is essentially about to give up. He's done. None of the music is working, and he gets into this freak accident and wakes up in a world where the Beatles never existed. And to ascend his claim to fame, he starts using the legendary songs of the Beatles, to raise his career. That's the general premise. That's what's in the trailers, and that's what the movie lets you to believe that the movie is about once you go in. So I saw this early this week, and I'm going to get quickly into what I thought and what I didn't like and where I rate the film. So my likes. I really dug the concept. I think the way to get people into this movie is the way that the trailers does. It doesn't explain too much. It says this is this and that, and then we're in, and it works. Got me in, got me excited about the film. I think it's a bit of a bait and switch once you actually get into the movie, but that is a great concept, and it works to get people excited about seeing what this film is about. I did have some trepidations that I mentioned in my hidden gems that I think this concept could be bigger than the way that the film ends, and so I'll get into later into the review. But I do think the takeoff and the concept of how you start this movie off is fantastic. Two, the other thing that I like is Lily James. I am now at the point between Cinderella and between Baby Driver and this that I can watch Lily James do anything. She's infectious. She is the heartbeat of what makes this movie go. This is no disdain or like discredit to Himesh. He does great as Jack. Their chemistry together really works, and he also carries his film. But what is the lifeline that keeps this movie going through is Lily James. Because, well, I'll get into it. This movie isn't quite what it is on surface. It's essentially a love story, a romance film, and Lily James is the heartbeat of that love story. So once the movie kind of focuses in on that, she's great in everything that she does on scene. Third, you can't beat this, but you get to see and hear Beatles music live through movie speakers and through on a movie screen. So that's interesting and dope to hear, especially for a couple of audiences that don't know who the Beatles are or haven't heard their catalog or don't even know that some songs that have been redone and remade were originally associated and done by them. I think it's great to get Beatles music out there. But that also then creates my dislike. So my dislike is this movie is literally made just to display Beatles music. That's it. There's nothing else really going on in this film. It's a Beatles karaoke display. It's sort of like if Guitar Hero, I think it was Rock Band, if Rock Band Beatles did a live movie, this is kind of what you would get. It's a lot of karaoke Beatles songs that at this point in time, if I just want to go and hear Beatles, it's good to put the Beatles back in the memory of people and the social zeitgeist, if you will. But you can find these songs on Spotify now. You can have easily access to a Beatles catalog without having to watch a film for it. And I also don't think people who aren't familiar with the Beatles are going to go to a movie for Yesterday anyway. So I feel like you're playing to the familiar swamp or familiar house of watching these. Whoever going to go see this movie already knows and is in love with these songs. So it's essentially a karaoke sing-along with people, with an actor who isn't quite the Beatles. Because there's nothing else that really happens in this film. Like I said, it switches to a love story. Another one of my dislikes is when you, for timeline purposes, when you remove the Beatles from the world, and some other things, but I won't ruin those because they're joke beats, and they work well. But when you remove the Beatles from the world, that's also going to have a butterfly effect on other things, musically, socially, just the way that some things in the world happens. And unfortunately, this movie just deals with the surface level of removing the Beatles and not any of the ramifications that having them removed would have on the world. And so this movie becomes very hollow and very kind of lazy when dealing with the timeline versus what's actually happening and then becoming a romance film. The romance part of this works, but it's not something you haven't seen before. And so the originality or the original or the hook in was the disappearance of the Beatles and all of that stuff. Once that becomes average to mundane, the love story also, which isn't that great, with some great characters, but isn't that new or original or great, don't mesh, and it just makes the film is like, well, this is very forgettable and not a reason for me to be here, truthfully. And lastly, there is no sense of resolve or a resolution for our main character as far as the music and Beatles stuff goes. It does for his relationship, but for that stuff, there's nothing that really happens. He doesn't get his comeuppance. He doesn't learn anything really. It's kind of just like, oh, well, stole some music. Oops. And then everyone's like, oh, that's fine. That's cool. But you get to kind of just go back and do the world. I won't ruin everything with the ending, but it's a love story, and you know how these love stories end. So if that's going to be your typical story, and then nothing happens on the Beatles, like the musical side or the Beatles side of it, this literally is just an hour and 50-minute music video, karaoke style, with a decent romance film intertwined in, and that's not really what the trailers make it come out to be, nor what I was expecting when I go in. And when you're in a world where, while I didn't care that much for it, when you're in a world where Bohemian Rhapsody exists or Rocket Man exists, when you get this, while obviously not a biopic, I'm not comparing to that, but when you're dealing with music, I think you can do a little bit more weight and a little bit more heft to what it is you're delivering, which sucks. But overall, I think the movie is fun. It's just very forgettable, and it leaves you the back half of the film while it gets into the romance stuff. While their chemistry is great, you're left wanting more tied up with the timeline and the Beatles were moving. It just feels really messy and cumbersome at the end of the flick. So for me, out of the ranking systems of Play It Again, Sam, Once Is Enough, and give me a time stone so I never had to think about this film again, it's not quite the time stone level because I do like aspects of the movie, and like I said, it's fun to hear the Beatles, but this is going to be on the low end of Once Is Enough for me. I forgot more about this film than I remember, outside of Lily James just being effervescent to watch. This movie is very forgettable. Ed Sheeran's funny. He has some funny moments in it, but overall, it's a movie that doesn't all the parts work, but come together in a very hollow, empty, and forgettable film. And it sucks because it was one of the ones I thought would have been good as a counter program to all the big stuff that we're getting this summer. But those are my thoughts. If you've seen yesterday, if you have, go ahead and leave your comments in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell. First 500 folks that become the subscribers to the channel will be the founders of the channel, and I'll give somebody something nice for hanging around and letting everybody know about the place, okay? You can hit us up on email at hollywoodalreadydidit@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter at hollywoodadi. We also have a podcast by the same name that is on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere that plays podcasts. This last episode, we talked all about Toy Story 4. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours?